The artist is Albert Robida, whom I came to trust. Albert joined the National Guard, a citizens' militia, largely working class, formed long since but expanded in crises. He's here, wearing glasses. The militia, growing in numbers as unemployment grew, was still largely under training. The Prussians wouldn't attack until their big guns arrived. There was a period of phony war. It seems the officers of guard battalions had time to chat up the cantinières, the domestics, and Robida had the time to sketch them. I said I trust him, but is this credible, even in Paris? Explanation. Battalions were formed by district. Robida has fun with the fact that in the prosperous ones, some of the cantinières dressed like the regimental daughters of comic opera. He was not without class awareness. During the phony war, the Prussians shell intermittently, just to remind Parisians that they are under siege. Another reminder is the sight of middle-class young ladies, not cantinières, collecting money to buy cannon for the National Guard. These will be cast in foundries in Paris itself. And so a poorer part of the male population is being seriously armed. Winter's approaching, and the Prussians give up all idea of an assault and decide to starve Paris into submission. The siege begins to bite. Women were the first to suffer. If still employed, they earned about £1.50 a day. A guard husband or partner would get the same. Before the siege, 3 francs would have bought a basket of vegetables from the now abandoned market gardens beyond the walls. Now, a few turnips cost almost as much. There was no question of meat. In poor quarters, food queues formed at 4 or 5 a.m., to be served, if lucky, at 7 or 8. But there were shops where one didn't need to queue. Comestible means food. Robida's modest grocer with a large display window had only soap and candles left. The magazine stopped publishing joke drawings about the search for sewer rats, but if the jokes wore thin, the food hunts went on. Dog meat, cat meat, and with French logic, the list was extended to the animals in the zoo. The market gardens beyond the walls were scavenged, at a cost. Hunger wasn't always as visible as this, but the gap between social groups was widening, as the government simply accepted rationing by price. It was in the 3rd month of the siege that the working women's patience snapped. They started to hold angry meetings, which were called clubs, in churches, not from piety but for the warmth, and perhaps for the pulpits. The speakers were increasingly left-wing, like Louise Michel, a teacher, nicknamed the Red Virgin of Montmartre. With their example and encouragement, the women began to form committees in many of the arrondissements and started to organize municipal canteens, where any available food was cooked and served cheaply or free. thousands of the urban poor were saved from starvation. Robida visited one canteen and shows us what are surely maids rather than poor housewives. So we learn that the middle classes too had their food problems. And in the warmth of the churches, demands not directly connected with food were being raised. The most important was that Paris should be allowed its own commune, which would fight for the interests of all the people during the siege and after. Another word was sortie, a word the women had picked up from Father Duchesne, whom we'll meet in a later video. A sortie means a sally. Being Paris, une sortie torrentielle, a torrential sortie, to break through the Prussian lines. Now the sortie would have to be carried out in large part by guards. So we make a detour and see what they were thinking and doing while their women were meeting and becoming slowly radicalized. But first, another question. The guards lived with their wives or partners at home, or they lived in casemates in the very walls of the city, or they lived in encampments, together with a figure who's missing in nearly all written accounts. Can images, perhaps, help to tell us if she had any role other than distributing the wine ration?